Good to go.
Morning, everyone. Pat's phone is connecting. Steve is connecting. Brian's connecting. Kevin, the world record holder, Kevin, is joining us. Mark Davis is joining. Lovely. Great to see some friendly faces. We letting them all in?
Yeah, we're all good. Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you very much for coming this morning to our very exciting webinar hosted by Steve Endacott from Eco and joined by Lindsay and Shayne and Harrison from Current PR. And we have Ruth as well joining us from Eco. The thing this morning is to just look at some key factors. Steve's going to be talking about a very controversial subject, as in, I'm not going to go on about it, but it's don't buy an EV. So without further ado, Steve Endacott is going to tell us why we should not buy an EV, which is by definition controversial. Thank you, Steve.
I'm not sure it is controversial. It's just statements and facts. So I'm a Johnny Green giant like most of us. I'm very concerned about the planet. I've looked at my own carbon footprint. I've looked at my house and it's 42% of my emissions, but it's quite hard to deal with because gas is so much cheaper than electric. But when you get to the car, which is 29%, how hard is it to unplug that car from the petrol pump and plug it into electric if you have a home charger? Yeah, and remember, 50% plus of us have the ability to have home chargers. It's the easiest thing in the world to do. It's the easiest ESG action. It's the easiest thing you can do to save the planet. So you should be doing it. But let's look at the risks of buying an EV at the moment. So generally, most people accept that EVs carrying a premium of about 20% over a petrol car that will disappear as manufacturing ramps up. And by 26, 27, we're producing as many EVs as we are petrol cars, so prices will come down. That's causing competition in the marketplace. So look at Tesla. They recently cut their new prices by 20% to make sure they're competitive in the market, but it had a 30% knock-on to second-hand values. So I have a Tesla X parked on the drive, which fortunately is leased. That Tesla X dropped £20,000 overnight when Mr. Elon Musk did that. And you might say that's a one-off event, but it's not, because it's happened across all manufacturers and they're all cutting prices, and they are going to cut prices over the next couple of years, which means that second-hand values are unstable. You don't know what you get into. You don't know what your exit value is. So it's quite a big risk. So I personally would not buy an EV at the moment. You look at the other options, obviously you could lease one. And most people recognize, well, all lease companies do is look at the depreciation and charge you that plus a premium for financing it over 4 years. So therefore, there's no point personally leasing, because it's not going to be any better. But then you come on to our lovely government's salary sacrifice scheme. Now, our government are a lazy bunch, and they just extended the cycle to work scheme and said, we'll use that for EVs and we'll have a benefit in kind tax of 2% instead of 23%. So we'll make it massively attractive. So if you go to your employer at the moment and you say to them, look, I actually want to do salary sacrifice and lease a car via you, you actually save 32% if you're earning less than 50,000. Ridiculously, you save 42% if you earn more than 50,000. So the more you earn, the more you save. Where's the logic of that? But by God, does it create a big saving? And it also creates a big saving for the employer, because they don't have to pay 13.88% NI and they can save half the VAT. So the employers are saying, okay, I tell you what, I'll make sure I take out leave assurance. So if I have any empty EVs, I want any risk, take that out the pot, and then I'll give the balance back to the employees. So quite often you can get 50% off a lease, EV lease, if you do salary sacrifice. And at the end of it, you just hand the car back. So you're not exposed to the vulnerability of unstable car market. And also you're not exposed to what's going to happen in the next couple of years, which is Toyota are launching battery ranges of 600 to 900 miles. What do you think that's going to do to the value of the 200 mile plus EV? So we've got to make this move, right? But be sensible about how you make it. If you've got home charging, absolutely do the move now. If you haven't got a home charging, think about how you're going to charge this EV. If you can do it via your business, it's a no-brainer. If you can't, maybe think about it. The one thing you probably shouldn't do at the moment is commit and actually buy in cash an EV for yourself. I know that sounds controversial, But to remind you, 50% of the people have a home charger, so you can move now. Lots and lots of businesses are offering salary sacrifice schemes, so you can move now. You just got to be careful and sensible about how you do it.
That's exactly it. So what do you think? We had a conversation recently about a initiative that gave people something back to own a secondhand EV. And you came up with that. And I think that's, how do you think that would work in terms of ownership and maybe in terms of a grant or a grant assisted scheme?
Okay, so I'm pushing this EV conversion scheme very hard with local government and also central government. When you buy an EV, yeah, it's the most expensive item you pay VAT on in your life. You're paying 20% on an average of £60,000 car. So you're paying £1,200 in VAT, sorry, £12,000 in VAT. I want to take that new VAT because people buying new cars can afford it. And I want to subsidise second-hand EVs. But I actually want to give it as a tax credit. So, for example, we all get £12,000 before you pay tax. I want to give you a £7,000 tax credit. So it takes that allowance up to £21,000 before you pay tax, which means effectively you're getting £2,400 off your second-hand EV. So that means out of that VAT, we could fund a car being subsidised 3 times. So when you buy the first time, and you have to convert from a petrol car, obviously, and we can see whether you had a petrol car from your registration, etc., DVLA. So there's no ways of getting around it. You get this grant, and it reduces the price of the second-hand car, makes it more attractive to you. If you hold it for 3 years, that car then attracts a second grant, yeah, to make it even more attractive to the person passing it on. But you can only pass it on to a person that's got a petrol car. So basically, that grant goes down 3 times, and by the time it gets to the end, you're making these cars available to young people, to old people, to people who do low mileage, because at the moment, the EV is the world of company directors and the wealthy, and it's fundamentally wrong. The tax structures are fundamentally wrong, and we should be using the VAT and making it cheap for everybody to move to an EV, because that's what we need to do to meet our 2030 target. It's not a complicated policy. Will I get it through? Probably not, but at least I'm going to have a damn good try.
And you're going to start with national government, or do you think this is a local government thing that you can get pressure groups to kind of, local authorities to maybe press upon the need for this kind of change?
I'm hoping it will be national government because we've got election coming. And when you've got an election coming, both parties look to have unique policies over the other ones, etc. I want to be neutral. I don't care if Labour take it. I don't care if the Conservatives take it. I just want to get this move to EV done. And it's about the second-hand values and cascading down the EVs, not new EVs. People can afford them, will buy it. It's the people that can't afford a new EV, but would benefit from half the running cost, yeah, and virtually half the maintenance cost. So basically, people would be much better off on EVs. Taxi drivers would be much better off in EVs. What are we doing to facilitate that change?
And Shayne, if I can bring you in, how do you think you can help in terms of, Shayne, you're obviously Char.gy, soon to be the foremost, probably at the moment, the foremost charging method for people who live in flats and shared houses and roadside charging. What do you think you can do in terms of, Steve's talking about making it more accessible for younger drivers and people on lower incomes. How can Char.gy affect change?
Yeah, so Steve's right. First, EVs are a lot easier to live with if you can charge them at home. They're a lot cheaper to live with if you can charge them at home. So there's 2 ways to charge at home. So if you have your driveway, then you're master of your own charging destiny, and you can sort yourself out with a charge point and an EV tariff. And that's the first thing that people who buy or who get, whether that's they buy one, lease one, or get it through the company, is sort of what they do. If you're a street parker, so I'm a street parker, I don't have a driveway, then your charging destiny is kind of in the hands of the council and charging companies like us who install charge points on your street to deliver the same convenience and a significant discount against the average price of public charging. So we're on a mission to put charge points in every street where there are people without driveways, so that charging is easy for them. And it's like, when you look at the research, after the price of new EVs, charging is the second biggest barrier to people going electric, and it's on two dimensions. One is the convenience, because it takes longer to charge an EV than it does to refuel a petrol car. So you kind of want to do that when the car is parked rather than have to make that a separate task. And then the cost. So, the cost of public charging is fairly high at the moment because electricity prices are high. And yeah, we've been quite innovative with our tariff to offer overnight charging at a significantly discounted rate, about 25% cheaper than the average price of charging on AC networks and about half the price of charging versus DC networks. It's always going to be more expensive than charging on your home supply, because people forget that they already cover a whole lot of costs that are involved in delivering that power. And they have to buy a home charge point and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think, the role of charging companies like us is to deliver that convenience, so charging isn't seen as a hassle, and then deliver the price benefits or value benefits of the nature of electricity pricing, because it's not the same cost throughout the day.
Cool. Okay, that's a very solid approach to it, and I think it's something, destination charging is something we all need to embrace. Car park charging, street charging. Lindsay, you joined us on the rally this year, and you've been a great support for us and all the rally contestants coming from London to Brighton and Paris. What's your thoughts? You're an early adopter, and you're looking at the kind of people behind this infrastructure. What are your thoughts on the future, and how do we best play it? We've got some great ideas from Steve and Shayne here. How do you think things are going to change?
Yeah, I think there are many, many different ways of charging a vehicle, and actually, with every car on average being parked for over 95% of its life, we need to make sure that when the cars aren't moving, they're being charged, whether that means extensive destination charging wherever we are going about our daily lives, or overnight for on-street charging like char.gy can provide, or at home. And I think my lived experience is both having a driveway and not having a driveway, and having to actually utilize the public charging network in its entirety to be able to get me around and drive my electric vehicle. And actually, it's not as challenging as people make out. I mean, we've got over 50,000 public chargers now in the UK. You compare that to 8,500 petrol stations. You think, well, hold on a minute, surely there's a charger relatively local. I appreciate it's not quite as straightforward as that, but the average charging site has only got 4 chargers on it. So actually, there are 12,500 locations that you can charge compared to 8,500 petrol stations. I think the cost of it for me is just a huge thing, particularly when you're on a home tariff. If you do have the ability to charge at home, if we go back to the London to Paris EV rally, it cost me just over £2 per passenger to travel from London to Paris on a home charge tariff. So yeah, for me, EVs are a no-brainer, and I think if we can get the right people into the sector, if we can make sure that the correct skills are being pushed through to youngsters that are coming into the working world, and to the existing, not only electricians but commercial candidates, as well as operational people that can join the sector, then it's just going to continue to grow. And yeah, it'll be a great day when it's 100% EV eventually.
Well, can I jump in there? Because again, one of the myths we hear about is people worrying about fast chargers. I personally hate fast chargers. They should be there for the lorry drivers, the van drivers, these thousands that have to do thousands of miles a week. Yeah, I don't want to use them. I want to charge at home, and I'll give you some average stats. So the average commute is 20 miles. Average daily use of the car is 39 miles. The range of most cars is 200 plus. Do the maths. Yep. So anybody's got a home charger, it's like plugging in your phone. You do it overnight. And I've had my EV for 4 years, and I've actually charged away from home 5-6 times. Found it a reasonably easy experience. But when I want to do a long journey at the moment, I'm forced to get on the train. And I don't see that as a big sacrifice. So another thing that annoys me, everybody says, oh, I need a 400 range mile car because I need to go to Cornwall. Absolutely rubbish. How many times a year do you go to Cornwall? So I've got parents in Kent, yeah, a long journey. So I just have to get on the train and use the last mobile services like Uber to get to their house. Big deal. Focus on your daily use, right? And recognize you're saving the planet. to stop talking about range anxiety and fast charges and lack of fast charges. However, what I would like to see is what I call destination charging, where basically I drive from Manchester all the way down to Brighton without a stop, knowing I'm going to be virtually out of power, but I've pre-booked a charger overnight where I know I can plug it in, and I can just drive back again. But that requires pre-booking. So I know, for example, char.gy are looking at the future about booking mobility onto their units, etc. But really, the easiest place to do that is in car parks. Now, again, our lovely government are giving grants to employees to put chargers in. So why aren't they giving grants to car parks? So if you look at car parks at the moment, they're mainly based in city centres, etc., have loads of flats around them, and at night have only 15% utilisation because they make their money from commuters and from people shopping.
Yeah.
All the people in those local flats should be paying a flat tariff to charge their cars overnight. Get them out of there by 9 o'clock in the morning. They'll have to pay a higher tariff, their choice. That's the future. The car parks will be the petrol stations. But again, we need government action because without grants, it's quite a hard requirement for a car park with a bit of tarmac to put all that infrastructure in. Not going to do it. Char.gy may do it for them. Great, that's a model. The last one coming back to it is the cost of charging and public charges pays VAT at 20%, at 5% if you pay at home. Come on, guys. If you're going to do anything, level the playing field, use your intelligence. Lastly, everybody says, oh, if everybody goes to EV, we won't have enough national grid to cope with it. Absolute rubbish again. So the utilisation of our national grid has gone down by 15% because we all have more efficient lights and everything else at home. So if we all went to an EV, that's 10%. So we can just do it within our current parameters. But again, let's be sensible. We should only be allowed to charge our EVs overnight when the pit grid is not at peak. So all the charges now have to be controlled by hourly, so you can do that. But at the moment, the government's got a flat cap on electricity, which means everybody's charged the same amount, whether they charge in the day, peak, or night. So why would you bother? So make sure we have dual tariffs where it's cheap to charge at night, more expensive in the day. And again, we can level that out and use the EVs. Lastly, the EV is the biggest battery you've ever plugged into your home, and most vehicles moving forward will have vehicle to grid or vehicle to house. So quite often you'll use that as to charge your home in peak hours to reduce your cost. So there is no issues of EVs overwhelming the grid. Myth. If anything, it will make it more efficient, it will make it maximize, and it will make it cheaper for everybody. So if it's half the cost of petrol at the moment, imagine what it's going to be when we've got proper overnight tariffs. EVs will get cheaper, petrol will get more expensive, and if nothing else, the price saving of having an EV will overwhelm every other consideration, whether you're green or not. This is the future and it's coming. If you get off your arse now, you can actually get some great tax savings, but they won't be there forever. They're there to 28. So we've got guarantees in 2028, but take the opportunity. 50% off, you're mad.
How do companies is it like with salary sacrifice schemes? How big does a company have to be to qualify? And how much credit, what history do they go through to get you onto a salary sacrifice scheme? Or is it quite intricate? Is it really kind of, and if you don't, does it ruin your credit rating if you fail? What's the detail behind it?
Oh, it's like anything. There's no simple answer. So at the moment, because there's a long demand, the larger players we work with, Tusker, Ogilvy, Zen, it's a seller's market. They choose who they want to sell to because they've got lots of demand. So they're normally going for the larger companies. We're currently working with brokers to try to explain salary sacrifice to them so that we can deal with companies that only want 1 or 2 cars. There is no legal limit to how many cars you have in a business. You can have 1. It's all about your credit rating. If you have a bad credit rating as a company, you probably can't do salary sacrifice, but we can still supply cars to you, and it can be a company expense because remember the benefit in kind tax is only 2%. So it's still a substantial saving, even if you're a one-man, self-employed band of moving to an EV. The fundamental is do it as a company car because the tax benefit is 2%. You're used to 23%. Everybody stop having company cars because it's 23% benefit in kind, crucifies you. 2% is an absolute giveaway, and therefore take the company car. The other key advantage is you're releasing, on average, 12 grand of cash sat on your drive, either cash or personal finance. Put it on the company's balance sheet and release some capital in a moment where you probably need it the most. So there's lots of benefits of moving to it, just work out how to do it. It's not that hard, not that complicated.
I think it's education, classic. When we were about to do the rally this summer, we had a call from the Daily Mail to say, are you aware that by taking 100 vehicles on a cross-channel ferry, no doubt the ferry is going to sink? And this was a journalist that's been at the Mail for 25 years. And this was a genuine, can you send a video of us setting off, showing the ferry didn't sink? Now, this is a ferry that carries up to 60 articulated lorries, averaging 60 tons per lorry or whatever it is. They're hugely, 20 tons per lorry. But that myth was embedded. And I think, I'm wondering how, we try our best, we tell people, but is it like a school thing? Is this going to be something like, we get in early? Because I don't understand how these myths are perpetuated. And is it just because people are so afraid of change, or is there something inherently against electric vehicles that people are, is it just that kind of letting go of your car keys and your filling cap? Can it be that simple?
Yeah, I think there's not to unpick there, but I think negative messages are far more powerful and sticky than positive ones.
Yeah.
So yeah, when you hear those things, it sticks for longer and deeper than positive messages of actually living with an EV is easy. And there are enduring misinformation campaigns that are perpetuating those negative stories. So the odds are stacked in their favor. I think it's our responsibility as an industry to get out there and prove it's fine. So if you look at all the ZapMap and other customer research amongst EV drivers, people who have an EV are 9 out of 10 of them are never going back to a petrol or diesel car. So who do you listen to? People who don't have an EV and are worried about the viability of EVs, or people who are driving them and actually have some experience in the topic. I think
absolutely. Well, that's just it.
I think one of the big issues with that, I think, is actually that the algorithms of social media push videos to people's phones of the things they're currently watching or commenting on. And I think a lot of the news that we absorb now is all through social media, whether that's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok even. And if somebody comments once or looks at a video that's negative towards EVs, guess what? They're going to get another one at some point soon, and another one, and another one. And actually, you've got people like us commenting on the negative press, trying to give it some positive spin. And all our comments do is feed the algorithm to push that negative news even further out. I think what we actually need is some kind of really, really positive media outlet to just continue pushing positive videos and get the EV haters commenting on our stuff instead, and make sure that ours gets pushed forward.
They need to watch the electric vehicle show.
I'd also like to prosecute Jeremy Vine and prosecute the Mail Online, because those two people alone are the biggest 80% of absolute myth creation. They have people on their shows that just talk absolute rubbish. For example, all car parks are going to collapse. Oh, come on. Yeah, they used a stat that said a 1975 Ford Cortina compared with an EV is 50% more heavier. Why are you comparing to a 1975 Ford Cortina? The car park must have been built then. But all car parks have been built to withstand 5 to 6 times their maximum weight if ever fall. So it's just absolute rubbish. And when you look at the average weight of an EV to an average petrol car at the moment, because there's so fewer SUVs compared with the big petrol SUVs, the average is exactly the same. Yeah, it's like all the myths about, they pollute because they burn more tires. No, they don't. The average wear on a EV is the same because it's 4-wheel drive compared with 2-wheel drive. So you don't wheel spin. I could go on and on and on and on and on. And it feels like we just have a hate campaign that we have to overwhelm with, common sense over a period of time.
Well, look, we've got Brian asking, following on from that, Brian's saying, what's the effect of salary sacrifice on pensions? How does it affect your pension?
Basically, it doesn't impact your pension as long as you don't go below minimum wage, etc. So you should also be salary sacrificing your pension, Brian, if you haven't done that yet, because again, the savings to be done there. So our tax structures governmentally are ridiculous. There's lots of money to be saved by salary sacrifice on your EV and on your pension. Get some advice from your company, get them involved, because it's easy money to save. So the government have done it because they want to facilitate the change to EV. So let's make the most of it. I don't agree with it, but why wouldn't you take advantage of it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, a case to answer. Just very quickly, what, Shayne, in terms of incentives for people to, so, you know, I'm in a flat in Hounslow. Is there like a central kind of information center? So is it just local council, or are councils now starting to set up kind of phone lines or out to receive inquiries about charging? How does it work with local authorities in terms of people pressure? You know, like people saying, you know, my street, I've got 6 cars on my street, we can't charge it. Is there a kind of, is that a community-led thing, or is that something that the local authorities are running? Are they getting behind it?
Yeah, so most local authorities have somewhere on their website, it's normally buried,
Right.
somewhere on your website to register your interest in trying to get an EV charge point in your street or close to you, or saying, I've got an EV, please make it easier for me to live with. So I've been in this market now for about 4 years, and this is a totally new thing for councils to have to get their head around. There is a lot more support now for councils from government, but in my experience, most councils don't really want to take on this extra responsibility, and are looking for ways to facilitate that without taking on a whole lot of cost and risk and extra admin. So there's also a lot of private spaces where you can go to register your interest in an EV. So we have a partnership with Vauxhall. Vauxhall is really forward thinking in their EV plans. So they have fully converted their Ellesmere plant to producing electric vehicles. They don't produce any petrol or diesel cars or hybrids there anymore. And they sort of see that charging is one of the biggest barriers now for their customers going electric. So they've partnered with us and a couple of other on-street charging providers to work with communities and get those people asking for an EV charge point in their street. Electric Streets of Britain is the name of that campaign. So if you Google electric streets, you will find the Vauxhall page, which has a form for you to say, I'm going EV, or I have an EV, this is where I live, I don't have a driveway, please get me one. And we're aggregating all of that data, and we'll be taking that to councils to say, look, this is the demand in your area that you probably haven't seen yet, because people don't know that they can ask for an EV charge point in their area.
Sure.
And here's a scheme called the Local EV Infrastructure Scheme that the government set up, and councils are really sort of engaging with this really, really well. Actually, it's one of the best incentive schemes I've come across. Really well thought through, to help councils actually then do something about that. So they've got access to funding.
Not just for Vauxhall owners. That's for any owner.
Any owner, yeah. So
good.
Yeah.
Hey, Shayne, can I ask a practical question? I used to live in Brighton and used to have parking zones, etc. And parking out my house outside my house was a nightmare.
Yeah.
If I applied and I got a charger installed outside my house, I assume only people with electric cars can park in it. So I massively increased the potential of parking outside my own house. Is that just a myth, or is that a fact?
It depends on where you live. So different councils have different parking strategies for different areas of their cities or regions. So where parking is congested, you will have a controlled parking zone. Some of those councils, when they start to introduce on-street charge points, they often don't dedicate the parking bay next to the charge point, because they know that fear that they will get a lot of resistance and a backlash from the ICE drivers in that street, because they don't have an EV yet, and they don't see why there should be special parking permissions for people who do. And sometimes it takes a bit of time for people, the EV drivers in that street, to start complaining to the council, to give the council evidence that they can then go back to those other residents and say, you know what, we're going to dedicate these parking bays next to these charge points, so that you can only park there if you're plugged into the charge point.
So without being rude, everywhere I go, I see thousands of disabled spaces never used, but nobody ever complains about that. But when we want some dedicated EV spaces, that's a bad thing, is it?
Yeah, a lot of people think
Quite
that.
controversial. It's just the fault.
Yeah, no. A lot of people think that way. I think the yeah, no, in our experience, dedicating the parking space next to the EV charger makes that charger a hell of a lot more useful to everyone. It means that there don't have to be as many charge points in the street to service the local demand from those residents. So when you have a dedicated parking space next to a lamppost charger, which is only putting out 5 kilowatts of charging power, that single charge point can support the average everyday charging needs of 7 to 8 drivers quite easily. Yeah, most people, like you said in your opening, Steve, only do sort of 200 miles a week at most in an average week, so they'll probably only need to charge once a week, maybe once a fortnight. So shared charge points can service a hell of a lot of cars, and these sort of parking strategies need to be adapted to the local needs of the local community. But yeah, that's sort of one of the nuances and bits of insight that we bring to councils when we work with them. Is like how to bring the community with you.
I mean, councils are quite quick to put parking tickets on cars relatively often. Would they not see it as an additional revenue stream, just to dedicate it to an electric vehicle and send tickets out to the ICE drivers? It makes sense to me.
It should do.
It can do, yeah. And enforcement can be a self-funding activity.
Yeah.
But one last point, if you want to make them bookable, they have to be dedicated, because you can't have a nice drive and parking somewhere with a bookable electric charge. So it just comes back. There's a lot of thought to be had, a lot of discussion to be had with councils to say, come on, we're making a migration here. But it just frustrates me. Yeah, we've kicked the deadline down the road from 2030 to 2035. That it feels like everybody's going, well, we've got 5 years before we have to start now.
That's it.
Is that a reasonable comment, or am I the only one that feels that?
No, I think you're right.
The ZEV
So
mandate,
when
the
you look
ZEV mandate's still in place, though, isn't it? So I think the OEMs are still going to have those targets to get to at least 80% by then. And the fines that they're putting on for selling ICE vehicles means that the public are going to be pushed into buying an EV, but without them actually realising that it's being forced upon them, I think. Sorry, Shayne.
No, it's fine. The door, Lindsay. It depends on who you ask, right? So all of us in the industry, we get that. So we know about the ZEV mandate. We know that industry is prepared. The car manufacturers, so Vauxhall said, we're not changing our plans. It took a long time to put our plans into place. We're on this road, and materially the difference is marginal. And government thinks that as well. But the general public, I think, have heard that message and said the pressure's off. And I think it's taken a lot of steam out of the industry and a lot of momentum out of the switch to EV. So I think it's been massively damaging for the public's engagement in the switch to electric vehicles.
Sorry, we've got a question for you, Steve, actually, from Ruth. I used to be part of the Cycle to Work scheme. How different is Cycle to Work compared to salary sacrifice for EV? So is there a comparison?
Identical. Yeah, with a Cycle to Work, your average bike cost is about £1,200. Yeah, with here you're talking £40,000 to £60,000. So it's basically a Cycle to Work on steroids, because the benefit is 10 times greater. Yeah, it's average £14,000 saving in tax over 4 years. So that is ludicrously high. It does go down as we get close to 2008. It's 2% at the moment, then 3%, then 4%, then 5%. But even at 5%, it's still, but broadly, £10,000. So I don't know why we're giving such a massive benefit and then not done anything about it. Yeah. It's just typical of our government. It's like, let's have a lovely scheme and let's just not tell anybody about it. Yeah, and then they make it hard by saying you can only do it if you get an employer to do it. So we've got to work with employers. We can't just get people contact and say, oh, I want an EV, can you get me one? Well, yeah, but I've got to convince your employer to launch the scheme. And it's not that hard, actually, because self-gratification is really what's driving it. Every single director thinks, oh, I can save 42% or 50% of my lease. I'll get one of those. And once you've got them hooked, they go, yeah, I better give it to my staff as well, I suppose. But that's the way it tends to work at the moment. So you've really got to go to employer and put the pressure on. And again, if you go to our website, it's downloadable forms, downloadable spreadsheets. You can send them, so this is what the tax benefits are, etc. So we're trying to do everything we can to help the individual, but we have to go via businesses, and that's quite frustrating because it takes a while.
Okay.
What happens if the employee leaves?
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Basically, that's why most employers want what we call leaver assurance, where we give them insurance policy that says if that employee leaves, we will take the cost of that empty vehicle, so you have no risk. They fund that out of the 13.8% NI saving they've got. Yeah. And so therefore, it's normally about 10%. So they're still making a profit and have zero risk of people leaving. From the employee's point of view, when they leave, it's a big issue because they've got to find another company with a satisfied scheme, or their lease goes up by 50%, or they just hand the car back. So from an employee's point of view, it's a great way of attracting people, but it's also a great way of locking them in if other people don't have salary sacrifice schemes in the local area, because it's a big cost. And, if you leave your business, your cost of your car goes up by half, by 50%. It's like, oh, maybe I won't leave just yet. So it's a double-edged sword.
What happens with the 4.5 million self-employed people like myself and many others? Where is the self-employed benefit here? Where's salary sacrifice going to help us?
You can't. You have to use other tax benefits. But again, most self-employed people pay dividends. They pay themselves a low income to keep the tax low and then pay dividends. Dividend tax is 37%. So if you're offsetting against your dividend, you're saving 37 minus 2, 35%. It's just the same as salary sacrifice. Yeah. It's just under a different tax structure. So again, we've got advice for SMEs. We've got advice for self-employed. It's not as simple, but it can be done. You just got to be careful how you handle HMRC. You have to do the paperwork right. And again, we can guide you through that.
So you do take on self-employed. So self-employed people aren't marginalised yet again. They're actually embraced by
they are, because you can't do salary sacrifice, but there are tax benefits if you're paying a high level dividend. And again, we'll talk you through about how you take it and how you justify why you're having that car. Because again, you're having it as a perk of employment. You don't have to use it for any work purposes whatsoever, but you have to get the paperwork correct. You have to tell your accountant what you're doing so that HMRC don't come after you. There are solutions.
Okay, because the revolution will start in a white Ford Transit, as you know. Every revolution has ever started has started in the back of a transit van. And I'm just wondering how we approach and how that kind of the put upon traders and tradies that are ferrying themselves to and from London at the moment and probably being hit by ULEZ the most. Where's the schemes that are going to support those one or two vehicle companies that kind of, want to get onto something like this? They want to charge, they live in a flat in Battersea and they want to kind of, or wherever, and they want to get in and out. How are they going to get benefits from this? And how do we take care of those 4.5 million people?
So Bill, at that point, that's why you need char.gy, because fundamentally, if you can't charge an EV, don't move to one. I know it sounds a ridiculous comment to say, but it is the fundamental starting point. Then you can use tax breaks. Don't get onto OLEV zones. How can we possibly start penalising people for not driving EVs when we're not making it accessible to the poorer people, the ones that can't afford to change? It's the most ridiculous negative tax I've ever seen in my life again. Nobody knows where the money goes. So it's a very frustrating situation. We should all be paying the same road tax, agree. You should not be penalising people for driving a petrol car until you've made second-hand ones available that they can transition to. So the whole structure of OLEV zones, again, is fundamentally wrong because it penalises the poor and rewards the rich. Fundamentally wrong.
There we go. You should live in Sherwood Forest and have a friend called John, because I think actually that's what we need to do. We need to start taking from those that have and giving to those that have not. And they should be charging their Zoes and their Leafs and everything else as much as we all can do from our drives. So I think that's a really interesting point to leave it on. I think I'm pleased to have had everyone come in today, and I'm really pleased that we've had our first one that kind of indicates where we are as a group. We have more planned. We have the conference and issues and all those kind of things coming up. So we'll get you posted on those. But more importantly, I think websites need to be looked at and things need to be played with. Steve, if they can go to your website, remind us of your website again.
Very simple. Electric Car Organisation, acronym ECO.
Okay, and if they
Come
want to
play
see,
with our AI characters, talk to AI Jane and AI Dave, and they'll explain all about salary sacrifice, all about what you do as an SME. Yeah, much better than I can, because computers, funny enough, know a damn sight more than me.
and they'll be able to see you talking. So this month you'll be talking at the London EV show. You've got a slot to talk about this kind of stuff. They've given you a podium and a position. So that's on the 30th of November at the London EV show. So if anyone's going along there, I know that we're a media partner as the rally, are a media partner for that. So yeah, get along and see you on the 30th. I'm sure Shayne will be there. Lindsay probably will as well. I know that me and Harrison will, and everyone else will probably be joining us. So we look forward to that as a kind of meet up before Christmas. And we're also doing a screening of the film that was shot on the London to Paris event, which will be coming up on the 22nd or 23rd of November. So we'll send out details on that to show you what we did and how we got frugally, especially Lindsay, very frugally to Paris. So, and all the pitfalls that we incurred on that. But thank you for today. I really appreciate your time. See you next time.
See ya.
Thanks
Cheers.
Thanks so much.